From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. Our long national nightmare is almost over. At least the presidential debates are. While the third debate this week was the most substantive, at least compared to the other two, with the candidates dealing with policy issues, there were still some new lows and are you kidding me moments with both the topics, the questions, and the comments. To help us analyze what happened in the last debate and what else might be coming in the final 2 weeks of the campaign, we have two of our best political analysts joining us on Inside Politics this week. They are first Dr. John Weil, the Dean and Political Science Professor at Middle Tennessee State University. He is joined by Linda Peek-Schatt, Leader-in-Residence of the College of Leadership and Public Service at Lipscomb University. She's a veteran political commentator with experience in the White House, with Congress, and in presidential campaigns. Thank you both for coming on the show. It's been another incredible week on the campaign trail. By most measures, Donald Trump came into the third debate Wednesday night trailing Hillary Clinton in almost all the polls. He needed a game-changing moment, but he didn't get it.
He did not.
What was his strategy going in? What did you think he was trying to do to turn things around? Because it looked like he pretty much stuck with what he was doing, and everything he did was appealing just to his base, not to broaden out his message.
It was. I mean, and I think he benefited in part from Chris Wallace, and I thought Wallace was very fair to both. But there were some things that conservatives, would be particularly interested in. First two issues were pretty close, Supreme Court, gun control, abortion. I thought he did a pretty good job of telling Republicans who might be, tempted to stray or vote for a third party that no, he was with them. Pretty well disciplined in the first 20 minutes or so, and then it seemed to fall apart on him.
Linda, there was a lot of speculation going in that Mrs. Clinton, would she just sort of cover up and play defense and sort of run out the clock a little bit, to mix all kinds of sports metaphors there, and just be strictly on defense. But she looked for opportunities. She went on the offensive. Did that surprise you? She's got a reputation of being an extremely cautious person.
I think she went in knowing that as much as she could let Trump be Trump, she would come out winning the debate. And in order to do that, particularly since he began so well in the first 30 minutes, she needed to prod him, and she did with the Russia and the Putin comment.
She's figured out how to get under his skin, and
yes,
she kind of knows where to push that button. But she had to also be careful to sort of make sure she didn't open herself up to the knockout blow, because anybody can get a lucky punch in.
Well, and there were a lot of blows. I'm not going to say knockout blows. There are a lot of punches that could have been landed on her, and in fact, I think he did land a couple. But she was able to deflect them, both from Chris Wallace and from Donald Trump.
Dr. Weil, was the strategy by Hillary Clinton also to be on the attack because it might help her broaden out her numbers in some of the more red states and maybe help some Democrats down ballot, both in the Senate and the House races?
I think so. Again, sometimes I think it's harder for a woman to do these things. I know I have a daughter who's an attorney, and sometimes things are interpreted differently because we're used to male discourse. But I think she did do a good job. And I think the biggest thing maybe in her favor was the nasty woman comment, which I think was just completely gratuitous. She certainly wasn't any nastier than he was in the debate, and I think a lot of particularly women are going to react and say, that's the kind of put down we're used to getting.
Well, Donald Trump is known as a counterpuncher, but sometimes he counterpunches too much.
Well, yes, and that was later in the debate when he had begun, kind of the typical meltdown that we've seen later in debates with him. But I think the thing that is important in terms of what you said is that the research shows this. The research shows that women who are qualified, if they are not likable, don't get elected. But the voters will vote for a man who is unqualified, but they do like. So women have a likability hurdle that they have to get over. Okay. And I think to a certain extent, he may have been playing somewhat.
But that would seem to be her biggest challenge, because in the polls in terms of likability or in terms of trustability or openness or transparency, that's one of her biggest problems. How is she overcoming that, particularly in these debates?
Well, I think she's been lighter and smiled more in some of the debates and has not appeared to be able to be rattled by him. There's a difference between being, I guess, likable and being calm and poised. I think she's been able to do the calm and poised part. I also think that she had one audience, and he helped her with that audience with the nasty woman comment, and that is suburban white women, particularly Republican women. And she went into the debate leading 17 points with women, and she just wants to build that lead.
Dr. Weil, usually when a candidate starts speaking in another language, it helps him.
Bad hombres is not a good start.
It's not going to help him with the Hispanic vote.
No, it was, and again, just seemed gratuitous. I mean, but we do need to remember, you know, his announcement of his candidacy started with calling, you know, immigrants rapists and murderers. And thank goodness he hasn't persisted with that, but he has to go back every now and then and make sure, you know, that base is there. And I'm sure that he sees it in his rallies. And, you know, we discussed earlier, I sometimes think that he looks at the numbers and he looks at the enthusiasm there and he says, I must be doing better than the polls are telling me.
Now, Linda, you were in the Carter campaign. I suspect there's also that tendency to say, well, how could we not be doing well? Look at all these enthusiastic people that show up at rallies. I suspect President Carter might have thought that in 1980.
To a certain extent. I mean, we knew the weekend before Election Day that the bottom had fallen out.
Because attendance at rallies and polls and the votes are three completely different things.
They're two different things, and I also think he may have learned that last night on one thing at the Al Smith dinner, because he used one of the same lines that he uses in his rally, thinking that he would get an amazing applause like he does in his rally about Hillary Clinton being corrupt. And instead, he was booed.
And nobody ever gets booed at that dinner.
No, it was the first time. There were two first.
But we talk about these two candidates, and people are unhappy because they're cross with each other. They say nasty things to each other. But don't they both accurately reflect the division and partisanship in this whole country? I mean, we may not like it when we see it, but we engage in it on Facebook.
Unfortunately, they do, and there's probably no better indicator of this than, you know, are we really talking 3 weeks before an election as to whether one candidate is going to accept the outcome or not? I mean,
well, we haven't talked about that. Donald Trump sort of set history because he actually, before the election, before any returns came in, started to say, well, I may not accept the results of this. That sort of challenges the very ground
I have this
rules
vision of two different moving companies showing up at the White House and trying to decide which one belongs there.
Trump's gold furniture trying to be moved into the White House. But, you know, I think that was the other historic moment this week. First being booed at the Al Smith dinner, but also just there was an audible gasp in the room when he said that he would not commit to accepting the results of the election.
And if I may add, this would have been great for The Apprentice. You know, stay tuned for next week and see what's going to happen, but it doesn't work quite so well for elections.
Let's take a break. Speaking of reality television, we're talking with Linda Peek-Schaap from Lipscomb. We're talking with Dr. John Weil from down at MTSU. We're talking about presidential politics. We've got about another 2.5 weeks to go. Back with more conversation after this break.